My second business that I opened up in quarantine has officially failed. I am officially closing it today, and everything that I have inventory-wise is going on clearance. It is something that makes me so sad to say because it is a brand that I am really proud of, that I spent a lot of time and effort to grow and build, and I just love the aesthetic of it. I love the visual branding and the products I created for it, but I simply just don't have enough time for it, and there's honestly a lot of mistakes that I made along the way and things that I totally underestimated that I wanted to share today in hopes that as you're running your small business, you do not make these mistakes as well. Along with the mistakes that I made, there's also a lot of lessons that I learned in a good way, and I wanted to share also, even though this business is closing down, even though I will kind of joke and call this business a failure, there's also a lot of things that I learned along the way that actually really influenced the way that Learn with Pickles is going, and even A Jar of Pickles is growing. A Jar of Pickles is about 8 or 9 years old, depending on when you measure the start date of A Jar of Pickles was. And I think by any measure of success, Pickles has been doing really, really well. So it's kind of why would I open up a second business when Pickles is doing so well? Why wouldn't I work on just growing that? The simple answer that I tell most people is that I had a ton of time in quarantine and it was my quarantine hobby. And while it was a business inspired by more time in quarantine, it's actually just a surface, easier reason to kind of share. There was actually a lot more thoughts behind why I wanted to start Lion & Friends, and actually why for a period of time, I was actually kind of hoping / experimenting to see if I could grow Lion & Friends to be actually bigger than Pickles so that I could kind of actually steer away from Pickles and make Lion & Friends and whatever that became my main thing. This actually kind of speaks to some of the pain points that I have with Pickles that I think have changed over the past 2 years since the quarantine, since I had a baby, since I quit my job, and a lot of things. But 2 years ago in 2020, when I started Lion & Friends, these were some of the concerns that I had with A Jar of Pickles. This is still something I do now that I've kind of just embraced and figured out kind of my way around it. But around 2020, I was starting to notice that a lot more people were watching my Instagram stories and watching my personal life. And while I thought it was really fun and I really liked doing it, sometimes I was a little more hesitant. At that time, we were already planning to expand our family. We wanted to have a baby. And I was like, when I have a baby, how much of my personal life am I going to show on my Instagram stories? And how much am I going to allow my baby and my whole family life to be part of my marketing for A Jar of Pickles? So actually, I was very intentional when I started Lion & Friends to not kind of link it to A Jar of Pickles in a lot of ways, especially in the beginning. I try to talk about Fred, our dog, a lot, who's, a standard Labradoodle who is not super easily identifiable. And I actually on purpose did not show my face in a lot of the Instagram stories behind the scenes that I was posting. Even back then, I was very aware that I was running out of space to store Pickles products. It's getting even crazier now, and it's something that I kind of struggle with daily, but it's really, really hard to hold so much inventory as the business grows. In the Bay Area, it's really expensive to have space, so I was like, I don't know if I can keep up and grow with a business that needs to have so much storage space. With Lion & Friends, I actually started to experiment with something called POD, or print on demand, where I actually would not hold inventory, but I would actually print only when people bought things from me. So if you see all the sweaters, mugs, phone cases on my Lion & Friends website, those are things that I did not hold in my inventory, and it was basically only printed from a print-on-demand service when somebody bought a product. As much as I love Pickles and as much as I love the minimal aesthetic of something that is really small, and it really does reflect me and my aesthetic of not wearing a lot of color and just doing small pops of whimsy, I will say after a while looking at my grid Jar of Pickles or looking at my products, I was like, oh, this is so boring. I want to do something more with color, and that's also what Lion & Friends was. It was my exploration to do more color. If you can see on Lion & Friends, there's a lot more bright, bolder color palette. And even with the personalized stationery, you can see with Pickles, it was much more minimal, but you can see with Lion & Friends, there was a lot more color and a lot more brightness and pop. And that was something that was really fun to experiment with as well. Something that was really hard for me to grasp with Pickles is that all my products up to that point in 2020 was very not UGC friendly. UGC stands for user generated content. I was selling paper goods and pins, and it was very hard for it to be a shareable item in people's Instagram stories and people's posts. I wanted to find a product that everybody would take photos of and share naturally. And I was hoping for more of an organic UGC generated marketing towards that. And I thought dog accessories were perfect because the dog influencer world is such a huge thing. People love dressing their dogs and stuff. And I was like, this is the perfect way if I target dogs and just have more of a taggable product, I guess. Those three concerns were my mindset in 2020 that has definitely shifted because of everything that has changed in A Jar of Pickles in the past 2 years. If you just even look at my growth chart that I love sharing, you can see that in 2020, my revenue for Pickles jumped like crazy. And that was when I started to think about oh wait, can I do this full time? That's the reason I decided to open Lion & Friends. And that's kind of the brief history of why I decided to start a new company, even though Pickles was doing so well. I was wondering if I could really pivot and focus on a different company like Lion & Friends. However, I made a ton of mistakes through the process. I thought because I had Pickles, that meant that I was all set. I knew what I was doing, but I definitely learned some lessons, and these are the mistakes that I made. If If you have been watching all of my YouTube videos or followed my behind the scenes on Instagram stories for a while, you will probably have noticed that the thing I repeat over and over and over and over and over again is to risk very, very slowly and risk very, very little. My story with Lion Friends maybe kind of gives a little more insight into that, because that is a huge mistake that I made with Lion and Friends. Because I opened a store that was successful and I kind of knew what I was doing with Pickles, I was like, oh, my Lion and Friends business, I can invest more money into it, right? I could open a website immediately. I didn't need to start on Etsy. I knew how to market. I could risk more inventory. I didn't need to slowly scale my inventory. I would find an audience. I would sell my stuff, no problem. It was no risk. I bought so much inventory to begin with, and a lot of it is still sitting in my garage and taking up so much space, which, by the way, I will just say that today they're on my website, A Jar of Pickles, more than half off. So help me get rid of that inventory, please. I am honestly still very proud of my designs and I think they're great. That was my first biggest mistake, and that's why you will hear me repeat over and over and over to new businesses starting out. Be very, 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 very careful with how you spend your money. It is easy to not only dream big, but like dream unrealistically, and that's something that I definitely did with Lion and Friends. I really wish that I knew my own advice now, which is like, don't scale too fast before you really know what you're doing. I just assumed that I knew what I was doing, and I was very wrong. Another big main mistake that I really wanted to talk about was marketing, which I really haven't touched that much on in my YouTube videos that I hope to do soon. But I would actually say one of the things that I know that I'm good at is creating a brand and marketing and kind of showing my enthusiasm come across. And when Pickles was getting busy, I thought, okay, I'm just gonna pre-plan all my social posts for Lion and Friends. I'm just gonna schedule it. I even hired someone really great to kind of help me find those UGC photos and like import them and schedule them. And I had like a color grid, and I was like, I've done this for my previous professional jobs in my career. I totally know what I'm doing. However, something that I really did not foresee was that the lack of passion and time that I had for Lion and Friends was really, really showing through my Instagram. The biggest lesson I actually learned from my mistakes of Lion and Friends is that I didn't realize how much of Pickles was me and my branding, and that's something that was really taught through my Lion and Friends experience. I thought that I could be a lot more behind the scenes and not really show up for Lion and Friends marketing. It could be kind of like influencer marketing and UGC marketing, and I wouldn't need to Instagram story all the time, the behind the scenes. But through that whole experience and through these past 2 years, what I've really realized is that Pickles is successful because of me, which sounds kind of weird because obviously it's my work that I put into it. But what I mean is that it's actually really grown because I'm more honest and open about what I'm learning, what I'm doing, what I'm struggling with, what successes and wins and stuff. Because I didn't have time to do that with Lion and Friends, and I wasn't really willing to, I realized that Lion and Friends was like really empty, a shell of a brand. I feel like it was like visually pleasing, but there just wasn't like character behind it. There wasn't like intention behind it. There wasn't like connection with customers behind it. And that was really clear when I just started scheduling social posts and not really showing up for what I was posting every day. That's actually why, if one of your strategies is to be on social media, which I totally recommend as a small business, I actually do not recommend you use services like Planoly, which you can schedule your posts, because I think that makes you actually very disconnected from what you're posting on social media. I'm like a firm believer that every post that you post should be manually posted by you because you're more engaged at that time. You're ready to engage with comments, etc. Obviously, I plan for a Jar of Pickles calendar and stuff, but what I mean is that like I'm in it and I'm manually posting, I'm manually commenting on people. I'm not just pre-scheduling content like a month, a week out, right? I'm more present with it. And I think it really shows with A Jar of Pickles social media marketing. So those are all the mistakes that I made with Lion and Friends. And yes, there was like a period of time I was like, ugh, like this, all the things I should have known. I should have done this better. These are mistakes. But I tell this to all my coaching clients, and I really believe it. I don't really personally believe that you make like big mistakes in business. Sure, you might make bad financial or time investments that you're in the end like, okay, that was not worth it. But I think every mistake has like huge learning lessons. And Lion and Friends taught me so much that I really feel like are invaluable. And it actually shaped a lot of what I'm thinking with like this YouTube channel and with coaching and my Learning with Pickles branch of my business. So with the intention of Lion and Friends being a more UGC driven business and being a more shareable and taggable product, that meant that I learned a totally different size of marketing that I really do not have with A Jar of Pickles. In the beginning, I was very obsessed with figuring out my influencer marketing strategy, and I actually would say that it worked really well. I just didn't have time to invest into it. And a lot of it was actually tweaked from what I learned from influencer marketing from one of my full-time career jobs as well. From my influencer marketing and just what I understood from Instagram, my main channel of choice, I actually grew my Lion and Friends Instagram really fast, and I was very proud of that. I hit 2,000, 2,500 followers in actually like a very short amount of time. I don't exactly remember how fast it was. I mean, at this point in the past year, I probably gained like 100, 200 followers. But in the beginning, I was like going really hard on posting, going really hard on reaching new accounts. Something that I'm like really proud to say, right? Like I figured out influencer marketing. I figured out like a whole nother social media account that, yes, is now abandoned, but I figured it out for that point of time. I think something that I was really proud of and that I learned through the process was that I made like a very large splash when I first launched. And I think that showed with the new customers that I was reaching. I had a very legitimate website. It was very clear with my customer service. And because I came on strong as a new brand, like I looked very official, it was very different from A Jar of Pickles Pickles, which I grew very, very slowly and was like very like, I'll figure it out and I'll scale as I get bigger. And I think it actually gave me confidence to try like kind of bigger and newer things with Pickles, like my plushies that I wouldn't normally have taken those risks from. Something else that I was really proud of was my product assortment with Lion and Friends. I remember the early days of quarantine when we were just at home raising our new puppy. I was in between my full-time jobs, right? I had a lot of time, and I remember just like sitting there thinking about all these product assortments of stuff I wanted to do, and I'm still really proud of it. Like I had mugs, phone cases, sweaters, t-shirts, bandanas for dogs, obviously, and I was like, wow, this is like a very, very extensive product collection that, because I had Pickles and because I learned from my previous experiences, I was able to kind of launch with like a lot of fun things to choose from, right? And then I was able to introduce custom stuff like stickers, and I had like personal cards for a while, and for a hot second I did like personalized blankets and stuff. And now I'm reminiscing about all these things, and I'm just feeling so sad that this is a decision that I'm making, because for as many like mistakes and failures that I made with this business, I'm really proud of it. And I actually really do think that I could have kept it going had I had more time and had I had more energy to devote to growing it and pivoting and figuring out how to make it big. So that's kind of my whole story with Lion and Friends. There's all these little memories that I have along the way. Like I had to change my name not once but twice because I got a cease and desist because I did not Google the first name I had for the business, because I never Googled a jar of pickles. So this name just came up to me. I started a business and I got a cease and desist, and they're like, you need to change your name. So I needed to change all my labels, all my website domains. I like had to change my email domain 3 times. Long tangent of a story, but all to say, like, there's all these little stories along the way that I've learned. But this is just kind of a brief overview of why I started the business, the mistakes that I made along the way, and the greatest lessons that I've learned along the way as well. I'm so sad to say goodbye to this business. I remember actually when I first got pregnant and I was talking to my husband about Lion and Friends and the baby, and I was like, how am I gonna juggle a baby, a full-time job, a jar of pickles, and a Lion and Friends, and this puppy, and all these things? And he's like, okay, first of all, Lion and Friends needs to go. Like, I think we always just kind of knew that this was like not working, and I was like so determined. I was like, no, these are the things that I'm gonna outsource. This is the plan that I'm gonna do, and it can just run itself. And it's really horrible to admit, but there was like a month right after we had the baby where I completely forgot about this business. I logged in and I was like, oh my God, I haven't shipped these orders yet. It's really, really bad. I had to email every single one of those customers and say like, I'm so sorry, I just had a baby. I can either refund your order and I'll give you like some freebies along with your forgotten order that's like a month late, you know? And I feel like that was kind of the trigger that was like, I need to shut it down. It's just like bleeding money. And so the whole point of that is really just to say that like, this is a really long time coming. And as much as it's really hard to say goodbye to a business that I really did spend a lot of time on, and I really am very proud of, it's the right decision to make. And the lessons that I'm taking along with it is something that I can grow, learn with Pickles for, right? It's something that I can use for my coaching clients. And that's something that is really beautiful and will forever hopefully live in the cute bandanas that these dogs hopefully around the country are enjoying and wearing. As always, I would love to share more about the questions that you had about this business. Is it about influencer marketing, or do you want me to go more into like things that I would not do again, things that I would tweak and do differently if I had known? Let me know in the comments below, or feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm gonna do like a whole Q&A today on Instagram, so please check that out and ask me questions there if you would like. I would love to record a video next week that is similar to this, just so I can go along with this theme. And if you made it this far, you will be the first to know I am going to launch a beta program of my class that I'm planning to launch that has to do with growing your small business. So if you're interested in this beta program, it will probably likely start in July. Please either send me an email at hello@ajarofpickles.com, send me a DM on YouTube or Instagram, and I can put you on a wait list and maybe offer you a special promotional discount if you're one of the first people to let me know that you're interested. I will see you next week with another video.